Okay, welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here, and I will jump immediately in the conversation that we are here all together to attend. So I'm glad to have here for the Performing Identities program Manuel Segade, director of Centro Mayo in Madrid. Daniel Blanga Gubbay, who is a researcher and curator at both LiveWorks, a platform in Italy that research on performance, and then the founder of Aleppo in Brussels, and then I have Lilibeth Cuenca Rasmussen, artist and performer. She has been gone into the medium in different ways, and then I have Fatoş Üstek, who's a chef curator and director at David Roberts Art Foundation in London. So I'm glad to have you all you here, because the reason why I gather you here in Copenhagen is because all of you have somehow worked with performance in a very with a very interesting take, and also a kind of I would say innovative in a way. So I would like somehow to reflect with you today, and also through your presentation and of the project that you have that somehow show your work and your practice and research. I would like somehow to investigate how performance as a medium, or maybe how can we think performance more than a medium, and a practice as a research endeavor that goes beyond the dichotomy of does performance include dance or not, theater or not, how we conceive and how we can also see the possibility within this form of research, and also of conducting practice-based research. So I would like to give the word to Daniel. That is going to, I guess your projects have been, with LiveWorks, you have created a platform that really works on performance, but in a very different way. Maybe you can start talking about introducing the audience about the project, and then switching also maybe to your other project, Aleppo.
Yeah. Well, thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be here. And indeed, so I come more from a perspective coming from performing art, and then moving more to performance, and also from a theoretical background. And I was involved in LiveWorks since 5 years, which is a project, a residency project that takes place in Centrale Fies, in the north of Italy. We'll maybe just switch to the image there. Yeah, no, just to explain the kind of former power plant that has been transformed in a performing art venue. And in the last 15 years, they were producing projects mainly coming from the tradition of performing art, indeed, like contemporary dance and theater. And then, together with Danish and Simone Frangi, who are both curators in Italy, and Barbara Boninsegna, who's the director of the venue, there was this idea of doing a kind of project that was more investigating the notion of performance. And indeed, via an open call, supporting artists coming both from visual art and from the performing art background, but not in the idea of juxtaposing the two of them, but just to create a kind of hybrid landscape or field where to share different practices and different kind of questions. And since I got involved in the project, we started to retransform a bit the idea that was not simply an award, so people were not coming there to win something, but became more a kind of residency project with a very strong focus on reflection and sharing of theory as well. Because indeed, every year we welcome 10 artists in the space of Centrale Fies. And each of the artists has a budget for production, so a kind of production assistant, a kind of curatorial assistant and a technical assistant. But at the same time, the crucial question was how would artists benefit from a collective residency, which is completely different from individual residency, and how can we consider the space of a collective residency as a moment of sharing of reflection. So we call this project as a kind of free school of performance, because indeed the idea was to consider the 10 days of the residency as a kind of open moment of discussion about what does performance mean nowadays, and also beyond the art field. So we initiated different kind of tools and different kind of initiatives during these 10 days. So each artist has a kind of space to work, but at the same time we organize regularly the feedback or studio visit, where each artist has to present to the other what she or he is doing in the process, and really the idea of sharing doubts and sharing future perspective of what is constructing. And then we have very often some reading sessions. So we propose simply some theoretical text that might cross the research of one or several artists that are there at the moment. And given the fact that it's also a very nice location, it's like in the middle of the mountain with a river and some hills next to it. So we just like take the advantage of like going, walking and hiking for some time and just like stopping and reading theoretical text. And a third element that we initiated 4 years ago was this idea of having a midnight cinema. So every night we have a kind of film program we ask to each of the artists to provide a movie. And this at the very beginning, we started this because it's a super hyper isolated venue, so there's really nothing to do at night. So out of being completely bored, we just like suggested it would be nice. It was nice just like to have a kind of film program in the evening, but this became as well a kind of parallel way to enter the practice of an artist. So we really ask each artist to provide somehow connected to the practice in a very loose way. This might be a film that is connected with a project he or he is doing, or that simply might resonate to the way of working. All these kind of instruments were for us crucial in redefining what might be a space of production of performance, and how to consider that performance or a space of performance is not simply production oriented, but as a form of production that is in the making, that is beyond the result, and that somehow we cannot quantify very often in the form of presentation. But the importance of just like trying to keep this space of collective residency and the space of producing the work as rich as possible, especially focusing on theoretical reflection and ways of sharing. And this maybe brings me to my other project that I'm busy with during the year. During the year I'm based in Brussels. And in these last years I was I'm mainly working for an institution in Brussels which is called the Festival des Arts, that comes more from the tradition of contemporary dance and contemporary theater. But next to it, I created in Brussels a project which is called Aleppo, and that somehow is resonating a lot with what I was mentioning right now in this idea of performance as a space for research as well. Because Aleppo, I created this project 4 years ago, and so right now I can maybe go back to the other set of pictures that I had. So the name of Aleppo, besides personal familiar reason, it quickly became the idea of kind of fictional geographies, how to recreate one space in another space. This was like in 2013. But also it became immediately kind of acronym for a laboratory for experiment in performance and politics. And indeed, the idea was how to create performance also within context that might be reclaimed as a public program and moment of reflection that you share with the community. So at the beginning was the idea of having public program where to bring were to invite both artists and theoreticians, knowing that both of them are thinkers with different languages, so also in the idea that theory was not a tool to explain or theorize artistic creation, but artistic creation was in itself a way of reflection, a tool of reflection. So it was every time, the project of Aleppo was every time starting from one specific model that became a kind of regular event, which was a model of a kind of imaginary school. So every time starting from a kind of open question to create a kind of program of theory and performance that was lasting 3, 4, 7 days, and every time investigating a kind of specific question. Very often in the idea of reclaiming also a public space as a space that has to be used for both theory and performance. And maybe I would just like to speak to conclude about one of them, which was this project that took place in 2016, so it was 2 years ago, and it's part of a series of projects about the modern transformation of nature into nature with capital N, so a kind of fixed and idealized image that has been very often used also in conservative politics to justify what is natural or what is nature. And this, for example, was a project that was bringing together some theorists such as Isabel Stengers or Timothy Morton and some performance artists like Rodrigo Sobares de la Garcia, which is an artist from Chile, or Rafat Majzoub, an artist from Beirut, or the Xenofeminist Collective. And each of the participants were bringing contribution from very different perspective and language, so coming with talks or with performance or with screening. So this was a screening of the movie by Fabrizio Terranova on Donna Haraway. But for me, the reason why I would like to speak about this, because this was the project for me also started the kind of other crucial question for me nowadays, which is not simply how to bring together theory and performance, but also who and what can perform, and how to think also performance beyond an anthropocentric perspective. And back then this was like the first time was like trying to think how also the setting is part of the reflection, so it's not only the passive background or landscape in which a kind of program is happening, but it's an active element of the reflection itself that somehow is performing. And this brought to all the other future public programs that happened after it, where it was really investigating how we can also speak about performance and what performance does, disconnecting it simply from the idea that performance belongs to the body. And this is also, for example, what is at the core of the next project of Aleppo, which is the public program for Manifesta in Palermo, which is really about can nature revolt, or what are the possibility of a performative action and a political action starting from non-human agent and more specifically from the topic of nature. So just like to sum up for me, it's indeed, as Irene was saying, it's just like how to go beyond this dichotomy that exists still when we speak about performance, but not simply between the performing art and the visual art, but also between theory and the more practical approach, or theory and artistic approach, and how performance as other form of artistic creation can really dismantle this binary construction between theory and artistic creation as well.
Thank you, Daniel. I think I will keep some questions for later on, but your last reflection really connects with all the other practices that are shared here. And what is very interesting about your talk is when you mentioned to create the creation of a space of performance that exists beyond the result, but as a process that is ongoing, as a research process that is ongoing, and that's also an hybrid form. And I think just going maybe to Fatoş practice, this really helps me introducing what you have pursued, because you have been independent curator for many years, and you have done different projects, which somehow also were based on a result. You know, I remember one of your recent project before entering in the David Robichaud Foundation was you curated the art night, and indeed you created this huge event and performance that was ongoing for the entire night, people dancing with Melanie. So, and then now you enter in a position in which you are working somehow in a space that is developing that has a sort of research endeavor. So you are developing, you are trying to explore through the foundation also how being an institution that commission performance that perhaps also creates a space of research, merging artists but also theories. And so maybe I guess you can, you have more than me to say about the institution for sure.
Thank you, and thank you for coming. It's a beautiful day outside, and it's great that you're sitting and listening to us talking about performance. So as Irene introduced, I've been an independent curator for almost like 15 years, and I've recently taken the position of director and chief curator at DRAF, David Roberts Art Foundation, which is an 11-year-old foundation based in London. We also have a private collection. It's quite an extensive collection based on contemporary art. And I'm a curator that works with every media, and I'm very much interested in, like commissioning artists or talking about new ideas about the possibility of how they want to manifest themselves. It can employ the medium as a performance, or it can be a sculpture, or it can manifest itself as a multimedia work. And as Irene informed, I curated Art Night, which was a one-night-only festival that took place all over East London. And it was quite incredible because all the audiences at the night were performing. We had a trail, we had 13 main venues with 11 artists, and 9 of them being new commissions, and we had 60 collateral projects. So even the audiences were walking through the streets from Tower Bridge to Shoreditch Overground Station were involved in performance. And of course there were works that were solidly performance, and there were works that were installations that you had to go through. And that was quite a spectacular event, but that had a different intensity of audience engagement. Some of the installations only had 6 people at a time. Some works had 5,000 people dancing on a big public square, actually privately owned public square, which is a very important term in UK, I would say. So when we come to DRAF, DRAF has a history of commissioning performance. We have our annual evenings of performances where every year, one evening during the Freeze Week is dedicated to commissioning artists. And we had like Sarah Lucas or Rodney Graham, etc. I can't claim credit for all the amazing performances that we've commissioned, but what I will introduce you today is the performance evening I'm curating at Coco. So I have to mention that DRAF had a big space in London, in Camden. It was a former shoe factory operating on exhibition basis at a space of like 1,400 square meters. So it was quite large. And at the moment, we don't have a place. So that's also very interesting for me to think about, like what is the future of DRAF and how we are transitioning it, thinking about the institutions, the institutional real. And actually I want to bring a bit the independent practice that I've been building over the years to the new definition of DRAF. And Coco, in that regard, is quite a specific venue. It is a nightclub in Camden. Last year, when we were celebrating our 10th year anniversary, we used the venue, and it was such a big draw for many people and many artists, so that we are repeating it today, this year. And you're actually privileged that it's the first time I'm presenting the Coco lineup publicly. And I'll just show you a couple of images from the venue. So, and this is a very important venue, especially for music. Amy Winehouse also lived in the neighborhood, was always like singing there. Okay, it's not happening. So I might need to go through, this. So you can have a view of the venue, and this is inside. This is an image from last year. Actually, the performance was Marvin Gaye Chatwind. She's now called Monster Chatwind. And this was like our audiences. We had 1,800 people over the night coming through the doors, and the capacity is 1,410. So, of course, as you've seen, the space is quite specific, and it is an all theatre, it's red velvet, it has balconies, and it is tiered to look into this stage. And what I want to do this year is actually use it as an exhibition venue. So I'm almost also like kind of inserting elements or artworks into the venue, and we are also going to build a ramp to kind of break the, you know, X and Y coordinate of the stage, so it's not going to be stage separated from the audiences, but as a gesture there will be a ramp, and some of the performances will be activating these ramps to come in and out of the audience area. I'll just quickly present you the artists, so that maybe through that we could get a perspective. So when I was thinking about the artist lineup and the evening, one thing that we will be doing at DRAF is we will have themes that cross the whole year. And each year, the next theme will be accumulating on its predecessor. So this year, I wanted to start with human condition. What makes us human? And I think it's very timely and very urgent question to also like look around ourselves and to feel why are we, you know, like this concept of natural attitude. How do we understand the world around us and conceptualize it? So every event, every activity, every program we're doing this year falls under that theme, and they have a subtopic. So at Coco, I'm actually concentrating on the notion of intimacy. What is intimacy? And what is the intimate relationship? And how do we perform interrelations with each other? Let it be two people involved in a romantic engagement, or it could be groups of people or societies. But also at the same time, I'm not interested in like articulating a very abstract concept through performance, but I'm questioning if unpacking intimacy might also enable us to elucidate what we think about the art experience, what happens in the moment we encounter the artworks, and what is it, where is the meaning, etc. So I'm not going to present the artists and the lineup that they will be appearing on stage, but just through the diversity. So when I was also thinking about, you know, intimacy and thinking about how and which performances, one thing that has been important for me is the whole evening will have a polyphonic rhythm, and each performance will have different kind of moments of intensity and divergence, and I think it's also very important to weave it into the space of the encounter. So this is Alma Soderberg. She's a dancer and choreographer. So we will be bringing her recent piece that she showed at FACT called Deep Etude. Actually, she responds to polyphonic music and through her dance choreography. Okay, maybe like this. Sorry, maybe this. Yeah, perfect. And then we have Bob Kill. Actually, it's an artist that has invented herself as a new artist, so it's going to be the first performance of Bob Kill, and that's going to be very romantic, and we will also have a choreography of two dancers and actually a dream sequence being told, but that dream sequence being slightly a bit like David Lynchian, slightly abstract and slightly personal. And now we have Charismatic Megafauna. It's a female-only artist band, and Charismatic Megafauna define or describe themselves as like party for politically minded people. So they are a punk drumming band, and they make their own costumes, and they're very environmentalist and gender active or aware. So we are trying to transform the toilets in Coco to gender neutral toilets at the moment. It's not easy, health and safety and all that. And then we will have Das Hund, which it has again another kind of political tendency in looking at the person and the, let's say the cityscapes, regeneration schemes, and they write their own songs, and they have just published this new LP for freedom. So they will be launching the LP with the 5 films they've been making through the last 3 years. We will also have Fiona Banner. She's going to revisit a performance that she did with Lilibeth in 2016 called Boys Boys, and we might have some helium balloons being inflated and on stage. And then we have Grace Schwind. This is one of the biggest commissions we have this year. By the way, we have 9 artist positions, and 7 of them are new commissions, and that's also quite ambitious, actually. And Grace is going to respond to the fragility and strength of body and the wounds. So she's kind of coming up with this choreography that we're working with a dancer, a bodybuilder, an opera singer, and there will be a boxing ring that is kind of broken, as well as she makes these amazing sculptures, and we will also have sculptures that will be placed among the audiences. And the camera woman who's also actively documenting the performance and live feeding the screen. So this is like from her earlier works. This is called Opera and Steel. And then we'll have Martin Creed. So I actually approached Martin to do something that he's never done before. So he's now writing a string quartet composition, and I think it's going to be fun. The other thing that I wanted to really expand on what we call performance. So we have a stand-up comedy. I think Stacey McCushy is someone to really watch out for. She's absolutely brilliant. She's born in Hawaii, but on the wrong end of the paradise. So she was poor, and her sandwiches smelled like feet. And she's basically also this kind of like larger-than-life character that she will do a stand-up comedy and take us through her childhood misunderstandings. It might include some wild dancing and making wishes on disco balls. And the last one is a young artist duo called Tate and Lyle. They kind of take the name from the famous sugar company. And they will be, they have invited 6 different positions, from swing dancers to environmental activists to migration workers, and they will be toasting through the evening. They're interspaced in the program, and some of the toasts will be very bitter, some of the toasts will be very fun and jolly, and it's going to kind of inaugurate that celebration, because I think with intimacy it's not only about the calmity, but it's also about, when you have a promotion or when you've finished your college, that you celebrate. There's like this kind of like a congratulatory moment that can be intimate, etc. Yeah, I'll leave here, and maybe we can have questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Fatoş, for this interesting presentation of artists, and I guess those who will be seeing this, will be attending this event, will be quite extremely lucky. But what I think it's interesting about what you presented today, it's that you discussed about being within and working within a transition institution that not only is changing space, but somehow also, I guess, approach and also expanding the approach. You mentioned that you are working with an expanded concept of performance, but that also means that the institution is somehow working towards and researching towards that direction, including dance and activist dance and deep stand-up comedies and so on and so forth. So maybe I would jump into Manuel's practice, because also Manuel, you have been working kind of independently in different projects, and you have curated also the Venice Pavilion, and you have embraced within your practice different really different research endeavor within the notion of or research area of performance, and you're now you are now director of an institution that has an history, the Centro de Mayo, and it's a political one, and each of your project has is somewhat like building up a statement So maybe you wanna. I switch into your into your practice with this.
Well, you know that this museum, as Irene was telling, you use the word political. I really love this. Like political institution, it's a political institution because it's part of the regional administration of Madrid. So you know, like it's a completely public institution, and we depend on the will also of the politicians when we make our things. You know, so it's a structure that we participate, let's say, like this in the political atmosphere of Madrid and the assembly, and you know the ideas we launch are discussed publicly in this sense, and I think this is interesting as a model too. The building, you know, is the first thing I wanted to tell. We believe that the Museum of Contemporary Art is dedicated precisely to a material that we don't know how it's going to be in the next years. So in a way, we always tell that the narrative we launch is a narrative of anticipation. So it's like science fiction that we do in museums of contemporary art. So the building needs to be in a way like that. No, Fatoş was speaking about the building. No, that is special and we need to, you know, reuse in a different way, no awkward ways. You know, retrofuturism, if you will allow me. Then, you know, like maybe Daniel was talking about precisely how to use different venues, no, open up to the public space, etc. And in our case, you know, have this building that is not really fortunate as an architecture. And what we do is precisely we started a project. You see this like a strange color right now. So we started a project 2 years ago of precisely how to develop the architecture as an exhibition, you know, like as an exhibition that is a performance of the building going on. So it's not an integral refurbishment of the building, but working with Andrés Jaque, that is one of the curators of Manifesta and one of the Spanish architects that is like blooming right now. And he, you know, like decided with us to make like a different phases that we do when we have budget to do them. And we call them acupuncture processes. So it's like precisely a transition in a way of gender also of the building into another kind of institution, another kind of thing. Like this is Andrés, and you know, like this is just to show you the results. No, like, but it was like a kind of an old Spanish restaurant. It's becoming strange, you know, like a surface, like that suddenly, you know, can have a lot of different projections of what it is this museum about. Integral part, but you see the imagination of Andrés is really funny for the future phases. You know, we have designed future phases that can be until 50 years on. You know, this is Julian Huxtable like line in the building, like if it was a new Sphinx, you know, for the future generations of Madrid, whatever. It's like a really crazy. But with this I mean that precisely is this way of doing of performing the building as a really way of understanding which is an institution of contemporary, what this institution needs. No? And we will continue to make these things forever. This is the space we gained, for example, when we took out a structure, provisionary structure that was there, like intended to be forever, but it was a provisionary model, and suddenly we had this space that, as you will see at the end, allows us precisely to perform also the programmation in another way, because it's like the atrium, the heart of the building. No? This is one example that happened before, but I will not go into it. This is another thing because also we you know, as it's half an hour from Madrid in a really suburban area, I mean, with a lot of class, gender, race issues going on, it's a poor area. So it's you know, a part of Madrid that was completely abandoned by the administration before. It's called Móstoles. So we committed from the beginning, since 10 years ago. It's 10 years ago the institution. The team before me, with Ferran Baremblate in the, you know, heading the museum, decided to focus a lot in educational programs, emphasizing how to develop with artists new forms of education and experimenting with them. That in a way allowed, you know, like the community of the region and the different already organized associations of, you know, citizens to offer things to the museum, like a, you know, like a urban garden, that is something that's happening from an association of archaeologists into the museum, or, you know, a knitting circle of women, of all women from the area that suddenly they are making, I don't know, like forests of hammocks with us to defend precisely the right for laziness of the women that work at home. You know? Okay, so things like this have been precisely part of this infinite uses project that Dora Garcia defined for the museum. That is really simple. It's just, you know, we decided with the refurbishment to put all the signalectics of the building in a 0 degree. A 0 degree, that means, like a 0 floor, or, like these possible posters that you can change with a, how do you call, like a magnet wall. You can change every information and the kind of communication you're using for the museum every time, every moment. No, this is the entrance, so it's like that. Or, you name, of course, the library, and it's just a library, or the terrace is a terrace. But, something as stupid as this, when you have a terrace that is a terrace, that, of course, obviously is a terrace, then, the declinations of the definition can be, like a forever. You can go on and making whatever you want in this terrace, in the usage through on it. Or, for example, to take the toilets into the 0 degree when it's something that is illegal. You cannot agenda the toilets in a public institution in Spain, but this is a piece of an artist and we are a museum. So suddenly, heritage is like over the law in this case. So this is the way we skipped the problem. And what I really want to talk about is precisely about this, how we are trying to do with the architecture, with the acupuncture, and with the infinite uses of Dora. We were trying to settle something that we were discussing since these 2 years ago in another project we have that is an informal school called Escuelita, no? That was to discuss with a core group and an open audience like now here about social choreographies. That is something that, like I was telling you before, there's this idea that all the ways of precisely moving together, forms of living together in society, and activism, practice in the street, whatever, all this public realm of our bodies, in a way is firstly tried in the static realm, for example, maybe first becomes a dance and then becomes a way of having sex together, for example. You know what I mean? Like there is something that is, say, first in the realm of the aesthetics, and from the aesthetics becomes a new social form, that is essayed before there. So, we try to make the building able to all possible bodies, genders, class, race. And this is because precisely we have a museum of contemporary art. The commitment, the foundational commitment of this place is contemporary art, and we really believe that contemporary art was born at the end of the 60s because of something, There's a kind of a set of things that I'm not going to explain too deeply, but, there is, I don't know, the 68, May 68 in Paris and the Student Revolution, but at the same time you have the first generations of feminist artists in the fine arts. You have the Stonewall riots and the gay liberation movement born in the 69. You have the end of the processes of the colonization of most of the countries of the Commonwealth, for example, etc. So, you have a world where precisely race, class, and gender were all together forming whatever these new ways of representation we needed as society in the moment of contemporary art formation. So, we are really belonging to that tradition, and we think that, the population we have next to us that follows us and makes part, participates and provokes what we do in the museum is really, like a main thing. So, by definition. So this project that was, just taking us to see a case study of black radical performance, really, like the Vogue, this, like the transsexual, queer dancing, black and Latino dancing that was invented in the 30s, 20s, sorry, in the Harlem Renaissance and continues until now with a kind of success. So we made this project where we were really focusing in one of these aesthetic formations of choreography that were provoking another way of understanding reality, so from Harlem Renaissance to Black Lives Matter in a way. So I'm going to show just 3 things for you to understand how it was, but if you are interested, you can see there is an R-View entry of elements of Vogue with this exhibition where you have all the videos, all the pieces of the exhibition, all the text, so it's easy to have a glimpse of what the exhibition was about. But this was the entrance. The entrance was, as you see the text on the background. In one side you have this piece of Glenn Ligon that I will talk later, is I Am a Man. The I Am a Man, in the left, sorry, you had this video like a human size, and it's this one. That should be playing. Oops. I tried. Well, this is a boga, a dancer of voguing, interrupting the demonstration against the LGBT-phobic attack of Orlando of 2 years ago. Interrupting, I mean, the demonstration against that happened in London, was the biggest in the world at that moment. And this guy, as you see, this person was completely like angry and dancing like a riot, precisely, using voguing as a political instrument in the street. Because, like these people that were dying were not like the white people that was in the demonstration. They were racialized, they were queer, and they were dancing. This is why they were killed, So this was like an interesting setting up with, the piece I was showing before of Glenn Ligon, that really was, taking this poster from the civil rights movement of the 60s. This is a picture from the 68 of the sanitation workers of Memphis, black sanitation workers, demonstrating against the low wages they were receiving, etc. This picture was taken in the moment that Martin Luther King was going there to support them, and Martin Luther King was killed in the hotel of Memphis that same day after this picture. So, this is an interesting art piece because it's from the 2000, and you see the I Am a Man poster repainted by Glenn Ligon, and at the right you have the condition report. That is, of course, like a clear metaphor. And if we think in the government of Donald Trump right now, I think we're like that, This is, this is the how do you call, the hoodie of Trayvon Martin that I'm sure you remember. This is the homages to Trayvon Martin that, as you may remember too, had only Skittles and iced tea in the pocket when it was shooted by this vigilant of the area. This is, for example, the first ancestor of RuPaul we found in history, that is like from the year 26, and is Beau of the Ball, that is the first queen of the Harlem Renaissance drag queen that we could find there. But also, we were resituating the history of black conceptual art through this lens. So, for example, David Hammond's performances that were kind of macho, as we see in the body prints, or the hair gardens, ephemeral gardens of black hair he was putting in Venice Beach, like imitating cotton fields. They are just becoming another thing through this reading of a queer intersectional position in between race, gender, and class. A campaign of this black transvestite that presented herself into the, as a candidate for the presidency, trying to get the presidency of the candidacy of the Democratic Party, trying to kick out Bill Clinton in the elections of '92, precisely during the AIDS crisis, and mocking, for her campaign, the classical images of the Black Panthers or whatever. So this is the end. Just is to say that, we were like showing all these materials, we were putting them in motion in a way, but what we were committed into is to precisely use the biggest space that was designed by another artist, by Rasmussen. We're committed in using this space as a space of apparition of voguing. The exhibition had some notes of voguing here and there, but the point that was important was that the voguing was happening and be involved in the bodies of the people themselves, incarnated, and precisely not as an art form, as a manifestation that can provoke other ways of understanding the art forms that were conceptualized around it. So popular culture.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you so much.
It's going to cut a bit of the video if you like. Too late?
Too late, but...
you can cut it when they begin to dance.
Pump the beat.
Thank you, Manuel. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, because what you have just discussed, and also the final piece of the dance, it's kind of introduced. It's a nice way to turn. It's a nice transitional into Lilibeth practice in a way, because Manuel, you have talked about the body as some sort of as a political body, and that makes me think as a space within, as a private but also public space, your own body, that basically shows how performance goes beyond the results, because we are constantly in action, and we are constantly in transition. So I think that I mean, Lilibeth, as an artist, you have been working, towards the with your own body, and within also with other bodies within your documented also performances, or like within your performance that have been recorded, and then as a video piece, and all your practice, at least since the very beginning, has been on going beyond this notion of cultural identity and gender identity, and basically you have put yourself into the field, into the center of the attention in a way, yeah. And also Lilibeth was performing yesterday at SMK, and yeah, and I guess you can tell more about your research on this aspect.
Well, I just want to do it shortly. I wasn't bringing a lot of pictures, but this is like a performance from yesterday. It's in the park behind the National Museum, Östra Anlæg. Yeah, so I have been exploring the performative field since 2005. It started as video, and I started to do my videos live. So my performances were text and music based, and I made a lot of different collaborations, specifically with musicians and dancers, and eventually I started to make long durational performances where I was more interested in to make traces of the performance and materialize the performance. And like since last year, I started to work with different communities, and I developed this strategy. Work with high school students is like in this case, it's a new piece, and we had it actually at Roskilde Festival as a startup this year. I work with the young people who are like 16 to 18 years old. And you could say that I kind of use a certain community to teach them about a certain theme. And in this case, we are working on the theme of the contamination of the textile industry worldwide. So through the performative act, I'm actually we are problematicizing all these issues about the textiles industry, and also making them perform with me. So, I don't know, So this piece is, we had like, I don't know how many kilos of clothes, and a class, and I think there's 25 students there, so through simple choreography, by just doing gestures, like everyday gestures, wearing clothes, and like wearing more and more and more clothes, and through this choreography we're showing these issues about the textiles industry. I also wrote a text from A to C, talking about the different textiles, the problems of, for example, wearing Angora or cotton or nylon, and it was almost a 1 hour show. And this project is actually this kind of structure you see here is like an all-in-one costume that I made a collaboration with sustainable design studio called Sur le Chemin, and they built this structure for me, which is like kind of like a suitcase that can unfold to a sleeping bag, to a tent, and different situations we were unfolding it in the garden there. And this project is commissioned by talking about like how to use art or performance as a tool. It's going to different countries because it's part of a project called Arte 2030, initiated by Louise Faurskov, and she's working with artists that has this, you could say, we are working on this 17 global goals. some of these issues. So yeah, we're going to New York in 2 weeks and going to Barcelona, Spain, and probably also Manila. So I will work with different communities each time I travel to this. Yeah.
Thank you, Lilibeth. I think I will maybe ask a general question, and then I'll open the conversation also to the public if you have questions for the speakers today. But all in all, you have all talked about an interesting approach towards a collective research, towards creating a sort of collective movement. You know, Manuel, you were talking about collective movement, and Daniel, you were mentioning creating a space in which we can all gather together, artists, researchers, curators, beyond some sort of like your work title in a way, and then also Fatoş, you have kind of jumped in between being independent and working with different kind of organization and events, and then being in an institution that is private but is somehow like embracing the challenge of commissioning performance and possibly also collecting. You will tell us. So my question is more how do you see that? How do you see that? How can we bring this research endeavor in a way, not to in a larger scale, but like kind of spreading the voice, not only in institutional context but also beyond, and where do you see the need? Where would you like to go next, in a way, in your research? And you can just be brief or articulate just through these questions. You know, where do you see that you can go next within your practice, and how do you see that we can expand this in a way, not only in terms of a larger public, but in terms of different forms and means that are beyond institutions also.
DRAF is actually a public institution. We have David Roberts, who's providing the co-funding, but we actually are also funding from public funds. Yeah, okay. DRAF is a public institution. We are actually a charity, and we do have the co-funding from David Roberts, who's a collector. Hence, we have the collection at our hand, but we are much more of a public functioning body. And for us, the new phase is actually, or our motto is, the future is collaborative. I think if the collaboration is a really important basis for many artists or many institutions, and today with let's say the shortage of public funds, there are many institutions that join forces in commissioning artworks, etc. But I mean collaboration beyond financial support to each other. I mean collaboration in engaging with discourse, engaging with the urgencies and understanding and being in dialogue with each other. So DRAF will be expanding to UK. We want to really kind of start a very active program of being involved in the bigger conversation, and also as a brand or as an identity, it's going to stay and become stronger, I hope, but it's going to have a very porous approach and attitude. So it's not about like claiming a place and then making it or perfecting it, but actually sharing the place together. And that also, of course, like responds or reflects on our programming as well, and how we want to engage with different, active players in the scene, and how we can also enlarge our publics, our audiences. So I'm not talking about a simple touring program here, but I'm talking about, let's say, supporting an artist to explore and experience his or her work in different contexts and different varieties, and reaching out to different audiences. And and I think the next thing I want to kind of like achieve is a slow art movement. I think we're far too fast in like consuming art, And I think not every artwork, some artworks need fast consumption, and that's fine. But I think some artworks might really benefit from having a moment to unfold and ponder, and that doesn't have to necessarily take place in a specific one-off space-time context, but it can take place in different, multiple venues or contexts or platforms. So that's
interesting. The words to Daniel and Manuel.
So, the first thing is that I think we never work alone in art. Like a culture is impossible, and even the most private thing you make as a curator, for example, that is writing. As you know, curators, we love quotes, and we are like ventriloquists of voices of the others because we always use references and this kind of thing. So, I mean, this is really important. Like it's always a collaborative practice in a way or the other, even if you don't want to. And you were talking before. I think I really love this expression. Like the performance is always like exceeding the expectations, or giving something more, a plus that you never calculate there. No? And I think that this is maybe the thing that we can learn as institutions for the future. No? As you were saying, this way of opening it up, of blurring the limits in between, this performative action, making, like understanding that the audiences are also a performative body that work in there, and of course changing whatever we are showing and we're making, and whatever we try to define, they undefine it again. And I think this is a really important point of what this public space can offer to, and institutions as public spaces, even if they are the finances private, like what we can really make collide there in this performative model of being, like understanding this like impossible way of fixing this language that already the regime of the contemporary is already destroyed. Like the subjectivities are a movement, so we need to just embrace that as institutions and not just like try to set it in a dictionary definition again and again, back again.
No, again, I think that indeed what you said, I mean, resonated a lot for me. But especially, I take your question like as two different approaches. On one side, I think that what kind of responsibility we have to still embrace uncertainty and the unknown, and to keep context where people can experience this uncertainty and unknown in a world that is turning towards certainty and riskless experiences. So I think that like one part of this is really to consider the work as a way to care for uncertainty, and at the same time knowing that this is not simply something that comes out by itself, but that you have to construct the condition for the possible to emerge. So how do you construct the condition, and with whom especially? Because Manuel was saying, I think that we all collaborate with other institutions continuously and with other players, like in order to make things happening. And I think that for me, it's really the idea of how do you create the initial condition for something that is still unforeseen to happen, and without managing completely what would be there, but still being hyper-responsible of the conditions that you're putting there. So for me, the next trajectory is really, I would say that I see it a lot as preserving this kind of uncertain space, and then more concretely, it is indeed how to also work with people and institutions that are outside the usual suspect of our domain, in order to not simply in search for novelty and the new things, but also in order to open unexpected connection with people that are not already part of the field.
Expand also what we were.
But I would say that for me it's really
the
not
known context of the arts.
Not an idea of expanding in an idea of conquering other field, but more indeed just like to deepen maybe how uncertain the space that we share might be.
Not conquering, but learning approach. I would say. Do you want to add something, Lilibeth? Thanks.